Good morning, Who Dat Nation, and a happy week 9 to our Bayou Blitz family. I hope everybody had a great Halloween, and is breaking in November with some crisp fall weather, some pumpkin spice latte, and please be normal and don't put up your Christmas decorations quite yet. That's that's a public service announcement from one of your co-hosts to your Bayou Blitz podcast, Bob Rose. Joining me for your Week 9 Bayou Blitz pregame show, Brendan Boylan. Brendan, you smiled. Are you one of those people?
Well, we talked about it on Wednesday. Like, I know
did.
Katie already talked to me about when can we start putting things up, and hey, this year I really want to do this. I mean, whatever she wants. But
Good answer. That's the answer from someone who will likely stay married for a very long time.
Whatever she wants, whatever's going to make her happy at the end of the day. The only concern is, and you know this, having dogs and having one of them who this would be his first Christmas is, I've seen the thing float around on social media. So whoever thought of this, very smart. People are saying like they used baby gates the wrong way all these years.
Yeah.
So putting the baby gate just around the tree, and we naturally have it's a doggy gate for the dog. So I think we're going to end up doing that, is putting the doggy gate around the tree because he's a chewer. I can totally see him chew up the tree. Shout out to little Leo, who has chewed everything in sight since we've got him. And I can hear Katie yelling at him now. So, great stuff, Leo. Right on cue, buddy. But I digress. A lot of you Saints fans are going to be yelling at your TV screens, or if you're here where I am in Charlotte today, you're going to be screaming a little bit because of the lack of depth at certain positions for the Saints today. Believe it or not, Bob got a call this morning, asked if he was still available to play defensive back. They wanted to know if I could play running back today. So politely, we declined. Bob and I are so wealthy, they couldn't meet to our standards for an NFL check. That's what happened. It's not because, I'm out of shape or because, Bob's a little past his athletic prime. It was really just meeting our demands. But Bob, no, this is a weird game to walk into. And we talked about it on Wednesday. And then I talked about it on a Panthers podcast on Thursday. For Panthers fans only podcast. So if you're a Panthers fan and you happen to find yourself here, go give them a follow. But just talking about how weird it is, the fact that if the Saints win today and the Saints win next week and some other things happen, the Saints are right back into the division race, which is insane considering that they've lost 6 consecutive games. Mm-hmm. Well, if you were going strictly based off of the first 2 times these teams met, you'd be thinking, well, the Saints should run away with it. Unfortunately for Saints fans, completely different team now. A lot of injuries. And the team that had all that confidence rolling into week 1 might not even have an ounce of confidence left over the last few weeks. Now, Derek Carr will play today, return after the oblique injury, which should give the offense a little bit of a boost. Mm-hmm. The problem is not a whole lot of guys to throw to, not a whole lot of guys to hand the ball off to. And you're facing a Panthers team that, while they might not be very good record-wise, they're going to give you an absolute bar fight because that's how these matchups in the NFC South work. And I can very well see this being one of those classic old Saints-Panthers game where it's low-scoring, hard-hitting. I'm not going to say, Roman Harper hitting Steve Smith or Cam Newton finding himself into the tunnel of the Superdome type of aggressive, but that type of atmosphere, because these guys are playing for what at this point? Really pride. And beating your NFC South divisional rival can bring you, your city, your team, a lot of pride. Bob, do you feel similarly heading into week 9 and what may be the most entertaining game of the week, or maybe one of the worst games of the week? That's how I really walk into this game. I'm like, it's either going to be extremely entertaining for the average NFL fan that just loves NFL, like if you love NFL football, this one's probably gonna be a tight one. But also, if you love NFL football and you love good football and good product, this is not the game for you.
No, it's absolutely not. There are few defenses worse, NFL defenses worse than the Carolina Panthers, who are 30th and worse or worse, in literally every category. One of those defenses is, drum roll please, the New Orleans Saints, who are 31st or worse in every category where the Panthers are 30th. Offensively, there is no team worse than the Panthers, statistically speaking. They are 30th and 30th or worse in every major category. But the Saints, over the last 6 weeks, have only averaged 13.2 points per game and 291 yards per game. So, for Brendan, you might not remember this. There used to be a sports handicapper named Pete Axtell on the original NFL Game Day with Chris Berman and Tom Jackson. In those days, through the late 80s, really through most of the 80s and into the early 90s, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and Green Bay Packers were both located in the old NFC Central. They were also annually among the worst teams in the league. And every time these two teams played, which of course, to being the divisional opponents were twice a year, Axtell would usually handicap the top matchups of the week. But twice a year, he would handicap Green Bay versus Tampa Bay, highlighting his segment, The Bay of Pigs. This game has that feel. And, for anybody thinking, the Saints defense should, they'll shut down the Panthers and they'll do this and they'll do that. Over the last 6 weeks, the Saints have given up over 31 points per game and 492 yards per week. So don't automatically think that this team is going to stop what's been an awful Carolina offense, especially considering there's nobody left in the Saints secondary. And with that, here are the inactives for the Saints this week. We knew a couple of these players were already ruled out as of Friday. On offense, Kendre Miller, also now on injured reserve. Jamal Williams, Bub Means, now on injured reserve. That's to go along with, of course, Eric McCoy remains on injured reserve. Then defensively, Marshawn Lattimore, hamstring out. Kool-Aid McKinstry, hamstring out. Rico Payton, cornerback, back out, inactive today, along with linebacker Jalen Ford, defensive tackle John Ridgway, and, of course, Paulson Adebo, cornerback, already on injured reserve. That means you have 3 cornerbacks, active cornerbacks on the Saints roster today. Alontae Taylor, who, you could argue that he's the team's defensive MVP, him or Lattimore, I think. Shamar Jean-Charles, activated, they had a good preseason, but activated from the practice squad. And Trey Herndon, who's been a veteran starter in this league, but really hasn't played a game in almost a full calendar year and has been a Saint for all of 1 week and on the active roster for all of 3 days. Those are your cornerbacks today, folks. And don't think that you're automatically, Brendan and I were talking about this before we went on the air. Don't think that you can you can't drop a safety like Will Harris, who's on injured reserve, down into the slot. Jonathan Abram, who frankly I'm glad about, or even in the old days of Von Bell or Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. You could take those from those guys from their safety position and at least have them cover the slot. Do you want Roderick Teamer covering the slot? How about JT Gray or Millard Bradford? Those are your safeties today outside of Tyrann Mathieu and Jordan Howden. So there we have it, folks.
Yeah, JT Gray, a guy who is beloved by Saints fans because he is a guy who's going to consistently be in the Pro Bowl conversation for special teams.
Mm-hmm.
Not a guy you necessarily want taking 25 defensive snaps at safety. This is a tough one because, again, if you are, national pundits or an average NFL fan that doesn't really follow the NFC South, you might be looking at it and going, well, the Saints beat up on the Panthers back in week 1, so it should be similar, right? And that's when, you go, oh, no, national pundit, you should do your homework and stop paying and, pay attention to more than just about 4 teams. Was that an indirect shot? Was that a pretty direct shot?
That was a Bob Rose-like direct shot, so yeah. I liked it.
Yeah, no, well, it's a problem with national media. I digress. It's tough because, again, the Saints team that you saw in week 1, completely different at this point. One thing we touched a little bit on Wednesday, but I don't think we touched on it enough, is the Saints are terrible against the run, putridly bad against the run. And you go back and you look at the stats and you look at everything from week 1, and one thing the Panthers did not do is run the ball. And you're like, well, that must be a good thing, right? And it's like, no. Actually, it's kind of terrifying because the Panthers were down 21-0 so early in that game. They couldn't run the ball, right? They were trying to play catch up from the first 5 minutes of the game.
Mm-hmm.
So in that game, Chuba Hubbard only had 10 carries.
Mm-hmm.
That's terrifying because Chuba Hubbard is a decent running back in the NFL.
So is Miles Sanders, their number 2 back.
Right. Well, it depends which Miles Sanders you get.
Well,
trust me, there's a lot of people in Charlotte that are like,
yeah, great point.
I don't know. But no, they do have 2 capable NFL running backs. And I actually really like Chuba Hubbard, maybe not as the long-term solution in Charlotte and in Carolina for what they're trying to figure out. But for now, as a reliable guy that could probably be a number 2 back for years to come, I love the idea of having Chuba Hubbard. I'm terrified that Chuba Hubbard might have a career day today. And because you didn't get to see a whole lot of them back in week 1, you're like, well, maybe that's an underdog pick for this week, and I think it's a good way to segue right into it, Bob. So, guys, it is the most wonderful time of the year because football's back, and it is here to stay until February. All you got to do is think, will Alvin Kamara rack up higher than 73.5 rushing yards this week? Or is Chuba Hubbard going to score a touchdown? Are you going to pick the higher or lower on that later this afternoon? All you got to do is to cook up some entries for a shot to win real cash prizes all football season long. And remember about the red zone rush option with Underdog, a game you won't find anywhere else. All you got to do is pick whether or not a player is going to score a touchdown by swiping right for yes, left for no. Simple as that. Plus, your entry will be automatically boosted, and you'll get a 51% profit boost when you play. So do that, and you can win up to 1,000 times your money by just choosing that higher or lower on player stats like rushing yards that I mentioned before. Bob and I have had some ups and some downs, much like the Saints this year, when it comes to these picks. As I mentioned on Wednesday, a different New Orleans sport came through with us last week. It was our first hit in a very long time. Something simple. Zion got 7 boards, which Zion's been playing good ball lately.
Yeah, yes.
So at least New Orleans has something to cheer about right now. So maybe we can carry that momentum here into another week.
I'm feeling good. I'm feeling strong.
Or I don't think you are. I think you're just saying it for the people. I don't know about that. But
okay, you're right. I'm feeling tired. I'm feeling weak. But people, you got to look past the results.
Got to look past the results. Same with our underdog picks lately. All right, guys, look, all you got to do, download the app today, use code Bayou Blitz to get up to 1,000 in bonus cash instantly. Again, download the app, use code Bayou Blitz to get up to 1,000 in bonus cash instantly. You must be 18 or older, 19 or older in Alabama and Nebraska, 19 or older in Colorado for some games, 21 or older in Massachusetts and Arizona. Got to be present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Void in Colorado. If you're concerned with your play, call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncpgambling.org. If you're in Arizona, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT-STEP 522-53342. And finally, if you're in New York, call the 24/7 Hope line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. That's 467-369. Bob, let's make our picks for the week. Get this pick-em entry in, and let's feel good about it. I know where I would like to go right out the gate. We're going to start with Alvin Kamara, per usual. It's tough because the Saints, again, have no running backs this week. And Alvin had a really good first week of the season against the Panthers, over 100 yards and a touchdown. So naturally, the projections are going to be a little bit higher than maybe I would like on Alvin Kamara. But I'm going to give you a couple here that I think, main word, could serve well. And here are those three options. I'm going to let you pick one. Higher than half of a rushing or receiving touchdown. All right, so essentially, will Alvin score? Second one, higher or lower than 29.5 receiving yards. That's one that we have played throughout the season. And then your last option, higher, no lower option, so just higher than 4.5 receptions. Which one of those is really calling out to Bob Rose?
Boy, I tell you, and I know we yell what feels like every single week for the last 2.5 years. They need to use Alvin more as a receiver. Line him up around the formation, make the defense adjust to him. You don't really have the option to line up Kamara around the formation today because literally the only other listed running back healthy is Jordan Mims. You really think Jordan Mims is going to get a lot of snaps? I don't. Knock on wood, because if he does, that means only one horrifying thing, Saints fans. Now, I do expect Taysom Hill to get a lot of runs, and most of Taysom Hill's snaps will probably come out of the backfield today. But yeah, Alvin is still your primary running back. Alvin is still your primary weapon. Having said that, that doesn't mean that you can't use him as a receiver on screens, check downs, hot reads, and on wheel routes out of the backfield. So I do feel pretty good about Alvin's reception number. I'm not sure I feel good about his yardage number because with Bub Means out, not that he was a great weapon, but he's a weapon. Bub Means out, Rashid Shaheed out, Kendre Miller out again, his regularly scheduled trip to the injured reserve, Jamal Williams out. This defense of Carolina is going to focus heavily on Kamara, Chris Olave, and Taysom Hill. So Kamara's going to get his touches. I think that if Kamara gets higher, 4 or higher in receptions, it's going to be strictly out of the backfield as a traditional running back. But I still feel good about that pick. I'm not. We talked about the all-purpose numbers on underdog.com for Kamara, the scrimmage yards rather, the rushing yards that he's listed at. I don't feel good about any Saints offensive statistic today, or for that matter, any defensive statistic either. But Alvin Kamara is going to be heavily involved. He's going to get a lot of touches, both as a runner and as a receiver. And, like I said, even though I'd be surprised if they moved him around out of the backfield a whole lot, that doesn't mean that they're not going to try to target him, that Derek Carr isn't going to try to get him involved. I feel pretty good about the reception numbers for that you listed on underdog.com for Kamara.
Take the higher of 4.5 receptions, so we're banking on Kamara to get at least 5. I could see that. The check downs, 2-minute drills, that type of thing. I don't hate it. We're going to go to Taysom Hill, since you mentioned him, and he'll have an interesting role today. So, a couple options. There's a couple here that I like. There's a couple that I don't necessarily love. So I'm going to give you a couple options here. One is higher or lower than 27.5 rushing yards for Taysom Hill. One is higher than 1.5 receptions. Will he catch 2 passes today? And the final one that I will give you is higher or lower than 6.55 fantasy points.
Honestly, I like all those numbers for Taysom. Like higher on all those numbers for Taysom. I think the one I like the most, though, is the rushing yards. Would you say higher or lower than 27.5?
That is correct. I will tell you this as well, because there's going to be questions about this with fantasy, is the way that Underdog operates the fantasy scoring is half PPR.
Okay.
So a reception would give him half a point. He needs 6.55.
Well, and I think, even though we know Taysom can catch the ball, and I do expect him to get a few looks in that capacity today. We know that Taysom Hill's primary value to this offense is as a runner, and that's going to especially be the case today. Again, we talked about Kamara, we talked about Jordan Mims, just a little bit ago. Most of Taysom Hill's reps are going to be in the backfield, either as a running back, as a fullback, as we saw the first few weeks, very effectively for this offense, by the way, or his usual Taysom Hill role under Sean Payton and Pete Carmichael, that of a hybrid or wildcat quarterback. Even when Taysom Hill lined up in that capacity throughout his career, you could bank that 80% of the time that Taysom's going to run the ball. We're going to see a lot more of that today. The Saints need to, and on my pregame piece, I outlined Clint Kubiak as my major X factor for today. Because Kubiak's going to be challenged. Yes, he has his quarterback back, 4 of his 5 opening day starters on offensive line, but who are the weapons outside of Kamara, Olave, and Taysom? Well, Carolina is going to challenge the Saints and Carr to find other weapons. So Kubiak is going to be equally challenged to find different ways to get Kamara, Olave, and Taysom involved. At the end of the day, though, Taysom is still the runner. Olave is the receiver, and Kamara is your all-purpose guy. You just have to find different ways to utilize them and get them in open space and get them the ball. But yeah, I think the stat I like best for Taysom Hill are the rushing yards. I got to go higher on that one.
You can go higher than 27.5. All right, last one, but it has to be a Panther. Right, so Underdog works that way. You can't pick all Saints or all Panthers. You gotta throw a little bit of.
We don't want to pick all Saints today, anyway.
That's true. That is true. So I'm gonna make this as customizable as possible, because that's what Underdog Fantasy is. So for you, Bob, as customizable as possible. Do we want to talk Bryce Young? Do we want to talk Chuba Hubbard? Or do we want to talk one of my favorite personalities in football right now, Xavier Legette?
What do you got for Xavier Legette? Because we just outlined that there's nobody outside of Alontae Taylor playing cornerback for the Saints today.
All right, Xavier Legette. And if you guys have not seen the interview he did this week, go listen to how he pronounces the word asparagus. It is definitely worth your time.
Awesome.
He also went to a children's hospital this week in Charlotte, dressed up as Woody. And, he has a ton of horses and stuff. So that was quite entertaining as well. He just seems like a real good, down-to-earth.
Good for him. I'm glad to hear that. I love to hear stuff like that.
All right, so Xavier Legette, the one that gives you the most odds is him scoring today, right? Higher than half of a touchdown. He has scored like 2 out of the last 3 or 4 weeks. Higher or lower than 36.5 receiving yards. Higher or lower than 3.5 receptions. And then, if you want to get fun, higher or lower than the longest reception at 16.5. I don't love that one. There are people there that I don't mind, though, because they did just trade away one of their best offensive weapons, right? Adam Thielen is not the Adam Thielen of recent memory that has, if there's a game where Adam Thielen's going to rise from the ashes, if you will, in the spirit of Halloween and haunt the Saints, it's going to be this game. But he hasn't been anything close to what he was once. So Legette's one of the only receiving targets for the Panthers against the Saints defense that has no defensive back. So Bob, again, higher or lower than 36.5 receiving yards, higher or lower than 3.5 receptions, or we just take the higher that Xavier's going to find the end zone today.
I actually like the odds, that Leggett will find the end zone, but comparing catches to yards, I think I like the higher on the yard. I like the higher on all of them, because again, we've been forced to watch this Saints defense for the last 6 or 7 weeks. You want to talk about someone that have earned themselves raises. It's you and I being forced to watch this product that they put on the field.
Yeah, I agree.
But anyway, and I love Alontae Taylor as a defensive back. I love Alontae Taylor as a cornerback, but he is not the type of cornerback like Marshawn Lattimore to shadow an opponent's best receiver all over the field. So Leggett's going to have his opportunities against Trey Herndon and Shamar Jean-Charles and Jordan Howden and whoever they put up there against the line, to guard the Panthers wide receivers. You and I like Leggett a lot coming into the draft anyway. He's a big play guy. I'd like to see a better route tree from him, but he's not going to need it today. He's going to get his yards. He's going to get his opportunities. And he's probably going to make some big plays against the Saints secondary.
How do we feel on higher than 36.5 receiving yards?
Love it.
All right, we're going to lock that in. And
this is a defense that, while healthy, gave up 130 yards to Juju Smith-Schuster. That's all I got to say on that.
That's fair. Well, of course, they're changing it up on me a little bit. Oh, well, that actually worked in our favor. Underdog just changed the projection line for Xavier Leggett. They went down on his receiving yard to 33.5. So that we're going to take 36.5. So I guess we'll take
He is dealing with a toe or a foot injury that limited him in practice all week. But he's definitely has the green light to play today.
And they just got rid of Taysom Hill's rushing yards. All right.
Okay.
Let's see if we can get back. What do we got? It went up to 28.5. They must have heard us talking.
I'm sticking with it.
Yeah, they heard the pod today.
They did. Thank you for tuning in, underdog.com.
Thanks, Underdog. Appreciate it. All right, do we want to flex it or we want to go standard? A flex, if we get all 3 correct, 3.5, 3.27 our money. 2 correct, it gets us our money back. Or we go all in, and if all 3 hit, we get 6.5x.
Man, I don't know. I'll leave it your call.
We're gonna flex it. We're gonna play simple. We're gonna try to be good and responsible here, because that is just as important. We have to be responsible. We're gonna be responsible. We're gonna flex it, and we're gonna say 2 of the 3 are absolutely, positively, probably.
Maybe, possibly
might hit. Yeah. All right. So we're going to do that. We're going to flex it, and we are locked in. Fun. All right. So we are locked in on that. Again, I will go ahead and tweet it while we continue our conversation, just so you guys know exactly what we're rolling with today. Bob, ultimately, this is a game where I'm really going to be looking at Derek Carr, and we talked a little bit about this on Wednesday. Obliques are weird because from the mental standpoint, you are physically capable of going through the motions of everything. It is a pain tolerance more than anything.
Yep.
And when you go through the motion of throwing the football, it just hurts like hell. So it is going to be a pain tolerance thing today for Derek Carr. My concern is that there's enough pain there that's going to limit his ability to stretch the field vertically. Is that a concern for you? And also, I mean, do the Saints really have a receiver that can stretch the field vertically today?
Yeah, it's definitely a concern to me. Along with pass protection, because I mentioned that the Saints have 4 of their 5 opening day starters back on the offensive line, but they couldn't protect the quarterback last week. And Spencer Rattler is more athletic and more mobile than Derek Carr, especially an injured Derek Carr. The Saints are going to be challenged to keep him upright, A. And B, you mentioned the targets down the field. We know Olave can make plays down the field, but we know that that's not Chris's game. and the Panthers are going to be following him everywhere he goes today. And if the Saints don't have, if the Saints run Chris Olave deep, it's not like you're talking about a major clear out option like Rashid Shaheed was, because who are you going to go to underneath? I mean, Juwan Johnson's played better, in recent weeks, but he's dropping a lot of passes. He's not consistent. Mason Tipton, MVS, Valdez-Scantling, Cedric Wilson, Equifax Credit Report St. Brown. Who are you going to go to? I do not expect the Saints to have many down the field plays unless they pull a shocker and Mason Tipton or Valdez-Scantling makes a play down the field. Today is going to be about keeping Carr upright and working the Panthers defense from sideline to sideline and hoping that your playmate, that someone other than your usual, the usual suspect of playmakers, Olave, Kamara, Taysom, hoping that one of those other guys steps up and makes a play for you. So, yeah, it is a legitimate concern for me.
This would be a game where MVS just goes off. Like this just has one of those games. It's written in the stars somewhere. Receiver, the Saints just brought in, has an outstanding game. Now, I've always liked MVS. I don't think that he's a guy that is going to be like an ultimate difference maker. But this is an opportunity for him to get some legitimate reps in as a receiver 2 or 3 and show his value not just to the Saints but to the league again.
Yeah.
This is a guy that was on those Chiefs teams, was playing for teams that were going to be competitive.
Yeah.
And just kind of fell out of the rotation, if you will. Just an opportunity to get back and show, hey, I can bring value to a bad football team. I can bring value to a competitive football team. And last but not least, remind people that he was a strong part of teams that made Super Bowl. So this is going to be a good opportunity for Valdez-Scantling. All right, Bob, before we wrap it up, there have been a lot of rumors circulating, and I know this isn't our player, but I think it is interesting. There's a lot of rumors and confirmed reports that there have been a handful of teams calling the Panthers about Bryce Young, and they have, at least for now, hung up the phone. They'll listen, but ultimately, they're going to hold on to the former number 1 overall pick. This is a guy who, remember, was benched earlier this year. Had to start a week ago because Andy Dalton and his family, unfortunately, were involved in an automobile accident here in Charlotte. Family and Andy doing fine.
Yes.
I'm thankful for that. But that Andy Dalton felt like maybe he could go this week, but they ultimately decided to go with Bryce Young again. Bryce put up over 200 yards, 2 touchdowns last week, threw 2 picks as well. From a mental psyche, we talked a lot about the injury to Derek Carr and how that might affect his psyche and his abilities. On the other side, how does it affect your psyche as a young quarterback who's been benched to have to go in and face a team that absolutely whooped you back in week 1? For a young kid in their 20s, how do you feel about Bryce Young going into this matchup? Is this really an opportunity with all the injuries for him to kind of regain some of that confidence back?
It's absolutely an opportunity for Bryce Young, to put up some decent numbers, and maybe, regain some of that confidence. And we don't know, how shaky his confidence is, but I gotta believe that this young man is, his confidence at the very least is teetering, if not shattered. The Panthers have not done him any favors since day 1. Drafting him last year. They didn't surround him with any weapons, last season. A mess of a coaching staff, a mess of a franchise that really hasn't improved at all in a year. This offseason we did highlight the Carolina at least seemed to concentrate in the draft mainly, at least seemed to concentrate on giving Bryce some more weapons, and then they go and pull a Carolina again, and then they go and pull a Panther again, and trading away their best wide receiver in Deontay Johnson this past week. So if I'm Bryce Young, I'm not operating with much confidence at all. So if I'm Dave Canales, the Panthers head coach and offensive staff, I'm looking at the Saints defense that I'm going to be going up against today, and I'm designing some early plays and some early shots to hopefully get him into a rhythm, because I still do believe that this young man has the tools to be at least a serviceable NFL quarterback. Serviceable to good at the very least. And you look around this league at the quarterback play today. Serviceable to good can win you some games if you have some talent on your roster. The Panthers do not, which is why Bryce Young is in the position that he's in. So I don't blame teams for calling, and depending on unless I had an elite young passer on my NFL team, I'm calling about Bryce Young's availability too. So I certainly believe those reports.
I can't blame anybody for that. I mean, shoot, if I give you a call and I go, hey, I'll give you a day 3 pick for the former number 1 overall pick, and I'll let him sit and see what he has. I mean, at that point, hey, I was screaming for teams to do that for Malik Willis a few years ago.
Yeah.
Malik Willis was a third, fourth round, whatever round Malik Willis ended up falling to. And look, he came in and he won a game for Green Bay this year when Jordan Love was out. I'm not saying he's got to be great, but I mean, shoot, I roll the dice on young quarterbacks, but I'm also in that boat, and I've seen more stats of it lately, especially with Anthony Richardson getting benched by the Colts, is the stats of like first-round picks over the last 10 years at quarterback that did not start more than so many games or got traded away from the team that drafted them. We have a development problem. And I don't think that's all on NFL teams.
No, everybody's blaming it on NFL teams. I blame it all the way back to high school, but especially the college systems now.
Well, and it's not quite the same for the NFL as it is some other sports, but the way high school systems operate, the 7v7 tournaments for football, the mixtape era, if you will, we're kind of past that now. We're not posting YouTube mixtapes anymore.
Right.
But the highlights, and let's get on Twitter and let's get on TikTok and people are going to know who we are. That is ruining some of these young kids as well. All right, Bob, final thoughts. Saints at Panthers. Saints need a win if there's any hope of salvaging much from this season in terms of a playoff spot, which I know you guys are going to hit me with the Jim Mora memes in the comments. Like, playoffs, yes. Like, there's still a potential, but the Saints definitely have to win today. Do you see the Saints leaving Bank of America Stadium with a victory today?
Yeah, I do. But not because the Saints are not because I like the Saints matchups per se. It's just because the Panthers are that bad. We got to. If Pete Axtell came up with the Bay of Pigs, we got to come up for something. We dropped the ball. We should have come up for a nickname for this matchup. Bayou Sludge, something. So we failed you. What's that?
We'll have one for post game. We'll sit on it. We'll have one recorded ready for you guys in the morning. Because we will use that not just for Saints Panthers, but really just any terrible matchup moving forward. We're going to have to use what we come up with.
Yeah. But I mean, you're right. And folks, as laughable as it is, and we mentioned it on Wednesday's show too, as laughable as it is, the Saints are very much back in the NFC South race. I'm not going to say the wild card race, but at least in the NFC South race. They win this game, and then next week at Atlanta, they're sitting at 4-6. The Falcons play the Cowboys today, who, we know the Cowboys aren't good, but we know the Cowboys are also explosive. If Atlanta loses today and then loses to the Saints next week, Atlanta's sitting at 5-5. Saints would be 4-6. Tampa Bay comes into this week 4-4. Their next 2 weeks are at the Chiefs and against the 49ers. So you tell me that you can't envision a scenario where the Buccaneers are 4-6? Yeah, but I can promise you nobody with a sane working brain cell in that Saints locker room or facility right now is thinking talking playoffs. They need a win, and they need one in the worst way. I go back to what I said before about I have zero faith in Dennis Allen's defense, let alone Dennis Allen. Now. even against a putrid Carolina offense. You mentioned you can envision Chuba Hubbard going off. I absolutely can too. I can envision Xavier Legette going off, or Adam Thielen reincarnating himself into the Saints killer he was with the Vikings. I think the Saints, right? You mentioned that you expect a low scoring, ugly game. I expect a higher scoring, ugly game. These are two defenses that can't stop anybody. These are two offenses that can't do much either. But I highlighted Clint Kubiak as my X factor in today's pregame article. I think Derek Carr is very important too. I think if the Saints win this game, I think it's going to be on offense, and I think they make enough plays to do it. It's not going to be pretty. There's going to be moments where, as fans, you might even turn this off. But I think the Saints do come out of here, and I'm going to go New Orleans 31, Carolina 27.
Dang, I was really hoping you were going to give me like a Drew Brees, Eli Manning type of score after you said it could be an ugly, high-scoring game. Man, if Bryce Young throws for 6 touchdowns today.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. I mean, that'd be fun. That'd be fun. I think a lot of people took that game for granted because neither of those teams were very good at the end of the year, but that was a classic. For me, yeah, I still think it's going to be low scoring. I think it's going to be ugly. I think there's going to be turnovers, not because the defenses are good, but because both offenses lack weapons. I'm concerned about Derek Carr. I hope he proves me wrong. And that's not so much because of anything outside of the injury. Like obliques are weird. That's just what it is. Obliques are weird. Drew dealt with the oblique a couple times throughout his career as well, and you saw how it hindered his ability to push the ball downfield.
Yeah.
So, I have concerns there. I'd have less concerns if Kendra or Jamal was playing today, right? Like if there was a back that could spell Kamara. I know it's probably going to be Taysom Hill today, but I probably would feel a little bit better. I think the Saints win this one by like an ugly 23-10 type of game. I just don't see a scenario where I walk away from this game and we sit down for a post game and then I'm just like extremely impressed by anything.
Yeah, and I mean, even if this is, this could be a repeat score of the 47-10 thrashing from week 1. I'm still looking at the product that the Saints played on the field, and I'm taking it with a grain of salt. But again, the Saints just need a win desperately. As desperately as anybody could need a victory, the Saints are in that position right now.
Yeah, win however it takes. I don't care if it's 3-0. I don't care if it's 2-0. Whatever it takes. It could be 100-99. The Saints just need a victory bad. All right, Bob. Where can people find you and your work and catch up on some articles before kickoff?
Folks, thank you for tuning in to your Week 9 Bayou Blitz pregame show. Brendan and I, as Brendan mentioned, we will be recording a postgame show, so look for that on Monday morning. And in the meantime, you can follow all of my week's previous articles and all of this week's upcoming articles and beyond on the Saints News Network, the SI.com team page for the New Orleans Saints. And I post my article links on my personal pages too. Bob Rose on Facebook, at Bobby R2613 over on X Twitter. Make sure, if you aren't already, make sure you are a member of the Bayou Blitz Facebook group and Bayou Blitz Twitter page. We're running all kinds of exclusive live content, and that's the best way to tune into our live weekly broadcast, which, by the way, this week will be Thursday instead of our usual Wednesday. We decided to flex our muscle. It's election week, Brendan. So we could do what we want to get votes. So make sure that you tune in for us for our weekly broadcast this Thursday.
Way to get that out there before me. But yeah, it's election week. It's a lot of things going on. It's the first few days of the month. So, and the time changed. Bob and I are just trying to get some sleep. That's all. I'm just kidding. All right, guys. For me, you can follow me virtually everywhere at BT Boylan. Quick shout out to those who would have or might have tuned in on Friday night for my return to ESPN Plus for the first time in 3 years. So thank you guys for tuning in to that. Continue to keep up with Bob and I all over the World Wide Web. Check out the Bayou Blitz Twitter page at Bayou Blitz Pod. And also, I tweeted it from my account below. and the Bayou Blitz retweeted it. So if you missed those picks for underdog, you have about 30 minutes to get those in. Go ahead and tail us. We are actually feeling good this week about the picks. So hopefully if you guys tail, we all are in the post game celebrating. That's what I'm really hoping for, Bob. I don't think we've really recorded a post game where we're like, yeah, we hit, let's go. So
No.
that's what I'm hoping for today. I might be hoping for that more than the Saints victory at this point. But thank you guys for tuning in. Like Bob said, we will be recording our post game wrap up. You'll have that readily available for your morning drive to work tomorrow morning. Until then, hope you guys find some peace, spread love, practice positivity, and enjoy the game. Who dat?
Through that.